What are we drinking today?
We are drinking coffee,
Hmm.
and not just any coffee. We are drinking Los Japoneses
Hmm.
from Subtext Coffee Roasters. It is a really delicious blend of Ecuadorian varieties, specifically Typica, Yellow Bourbon, and San Salvador. Very, very good lot of coffee that we found this morning before we recorded.
Yeah, it's got banana, vanilla, and jackfruit notes, which famously, I think I've said on the podcast before, despite being Balkan, I am not a coffee drinker. And I know how to read coffee, I know how to divine with coffee, but I don't really partake of it very much myself. And it was thanks to Key being such a coffee nerd that I started to have an appreciation for it as he introduced me to different ways of brewing it, especially pour overs, and various ways of whether it's the AeroPress or the Chemex or the V60 or any of those things, like how to actually start to learn to taste for coffee. So this morning, and prior to actually doing the Magic of Coffee episode, Key and I went over to this really lovely specialty coffee shop that roasts everything in-house. They have like very direct personal relationships with all of their farmers. They name all of their actual coffee brands after them. They switch out their stuff seasonally. Like they'll be like, nope, we're not selling this for another 2 weeks until it's ready, that kind of thing. Like very, very nice specialty place. And we went to their cupping. We tasted their menu. And it is, I will say, kind of like scrying with your taste buds because you're trying to pick up all this stuff. And now I understand why that's one of the philosophies you bring into how you teach people to scry.
Yeah, it is exactly scrying because with all of this, you have a sense that you just possess innately, but most of the time you're using it without thinking and without really having any awareness of it. So when you're tasting for coffee and learning to taste for it, you're cultivating awareness of the sense of taste. So you're not just tasting coffee, you're using the entire sensorium to actually determine what's in the cup. So what are the different flavor components that exist between two different varieties? With scrying, it's the same thing because as you taste, it's the first thing you experience.
Hmm.
Whatever hits your mind is like, oh, I know that flavor. That's, jackfruit, or that's vanilla, or that's roasted oranges, or whatever it is. You've tasted this before. You have the experience.
Hmm.
Same with spirits. You've encountered spirits before. You know what that feeling is. So you just have to lean into using the sense that you have, cultivating the awareness of it, and trusting what you're experiencing.
Hmm. Beautiful. And I'll be real with you, the cupping was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really know what it would entail. But it was really I wanted to go into it as blind as possible, but it was interesting to see, first of all, how the coffee was brewed, with like fully immersion style.
Yeah. For those who have never been to a coffee cupping, it is a very specific way of brewing it that you would not normally brew a cup of coffee.
Mm,
And yeah, just tasting it communally with a spoon
hmm.
and slurping very loudly to aerate it into the palate.
Hmm. After smelling each one first
Hmm.
at different grinds, yeah.
It's fun.
It was great. Got to practice the scrying in a way that you don't normally.
Yeah, scrying flavor.
Well, at least I don't.
Those fellow spirit taste enjoyers out there.
That that is true. That is true. I'd always appreciate that you have to taste every powder and oil that you make.
Mhm.
Which, ouch.
Yeah, I mean it is what it is.
At least you might have what we might call a very prolific palette
Yeah,
of sense memory, good and bad.
yeah, developed palate. What is the tasting note of church dirt?
Oh gosh,
Earthy.
earthy.
Vibrant.
Sanctified. Be not alarmed at the frightful howls that you may hear. It's Sfinga and brewing with the Chemex every morning key.
Yeah, just cranking out cup after cup.
It's pretty though.
It is,
The
yes.
version that they made where it's not that like cute like cuff with a little wooden bead that just has that like spout more
Yeah.
pronounced is not nearly as pretty.
Yeah. There's something about a beautiful object,
Yeah,
and a Chemex is one of them.
that because of Keith's James Hoffman obsession, where he would have all his books, send me his videos daily. Like my YouTube recommendations are now skewed to that. I watched his video on the Chemex. We'll put it in the show notes, right? And it
Yeah,
was really funny because as I was watching it, he was like a lot of what he was saying was like it's just beautiful. Like yes, you do have to have these giant filters that you have to fold multiple times, but it's a pretty object.
it really is. And once you fill it up with a beautiful coffee to match, checks out. And with that, if you would like to continue supporting my habit of the daily Chemex, please remember to check us out at patreon.com/The Fretful Howls. We have a bonus episode every month curated by and just for our patrons. We have a Discord server where you can come talk to us about coffee, among other things. A monthly live occult book club where we discuss a text of your choosing, show notes for every episode, and a whole tier for monthly group spell work from us on your behalf.
Also, remember to give us a like, rating, and review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you may be listening to us. It helps us fight the demiurge of the algorithm and the demiurge of the left lane turn signal on our way to these places.
Yeah. Helps us fight off the coffee leaf rusts and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
wasting diseases
Hmm.
and climate change that
Hmm.
is
For sure.
destroying global coffee crops.
Yeah, genuinely.
And while you're there, feel free to check out our services. I offer personalized coaching in magic and mediumship. So if you want to talk about how tasting coffee is like seeing spirits, come hit up my DMs. And sorcery for hire, readings, and custom talismans, oils, and tools. Svinga offers bulk and Fabamancy readings.
I do, I do.
She's the best. And both of us offer occasional limited occult wares over on withcunning.command.com.
Lastly, hit us up on social media. You can find me at Dragon Cunning, and Key is at barnowl.key.
Beautiful.
Well, for those of us for whom, I think coffee is such an important part of most people's lives at this point, but it's also like the ancestral offering,
Yeah.
the thing that you give your spirits when you want them to go fast, when you want them to speed up, when you want them to, have a little extra pep in their step and feel this need to manifest your results faster. I think that aside from my ancestors, the spirit that gets the most amount of coffee in my house is San Expedite. I think
Yeah.
he has his own little cup too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so let us it's definitely one of those things where when you pitched this episode to me, I was really excited because, besides you just being an owner of the plant itself, I think that very often when we're using coffee or chicory root, all these other kinds of things in our sorcery, it's very rare that people are thinking of it as a plant, right? As its
Right.
own kind of like actual herbal ally. So I'm really excited to learn more about it now, especially as I'm learning to develop my own palate and appreciation for this very man's best friend, if you will, of the plant species.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I really wanted to do with this episode is move coffee from the place of just kind of brown sludge that we drink to wake up in the morning to rouse our spirits, or that we just find in the pantry and throw into things that we want to go quickly, and really just get into the depths of it. And, as like you were saying, such a beloved substance of our ancestors, our dead, our spirits, and even our gods alike, it is an important magical tool. So, to talk about coffee as a plant, genus Coffea, there are 133 identified species at the time of this episode, at least accepted botanically. Within the coffee industry, there's some controversy about whether or not some have even speciated, but we're going with most recent botanical definition. But only a few of these species are going to be available commercially to anyone outside of the regions that they're growing, and let alone, of commercial interest for drinking as coffee. So, Coffea arabica is the most common species, 60-ish to 80-ish percent of the world's coffee production is Arabica, uh, depending on, year, climate, whatever is commercially in demand at the time. And it grows naturally in the southern parts of Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Yemen. But it is cultivated globally between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. As best we can figure out from the genetics, Arabica coffees originated from a hybridization event that occurred between Coffea canephora and Coffea eugenoides that took place in South Sudan sometime between a million and 550-ish thousand years ago, and then it spread north as it speciated. So one of the really interesting things about plants, we like to talk about growing substances from seed to plant, watching it live, watching it die, share air with it. Um, this is a plant that, just kind of grows around in forests admixed with other plants. It's just another tree, large shrub, um, that shows up, 30 to 40 feet high. Beautiful plant, open branches, opposite dark green leaves with prominent veins, wavy margins. If you've ever seen coffee leaves, they're pretty visually distinct.
Hmm.
Flowers are small and white, and they grow in clusters. And the tree produces a small fruit that ranges from bright red to dark purple, depending on the variety. Typically, they will contain two seeds, and these seeds are the coffee beans that we know and love.
Yeah, it's not actually a bean; it's a seed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which of course has its own magical connotations.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that they grow in pairs though.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, this it's fascinating as well once you've seen like a coffee cherry roast and you can actually eat that too.
it really is. Yeah,
Um,
and there are some really beautiful pastries and dishes and even porridges that can be made from the coffee fruit
mhm.
itself, that are popular still throughout the world today. So no part of it goes to waste.
It's been really fascinating because I have been looking through your man James Hoffman's encyclopedia, like the Atlas of coffee, and it was interesting to kind of read about the harvesting cultures of different regions, not just in terms of like coffee production for the sake of export, but also local productions, and how you get these like really beautiful single origin beans here and there. But then you have other places like I remember we're just talking about Kenya, for example, where it's more likely a community lot.
Yeah,
And but it's also interesting because it's just kind of wild growing everywhere. You don't necessarily
right,
have to deal with like a specific farmer where he's waking up in the morning to harvest them. It's like actually more common to just see them naturally growing everywhere, and then you pick from those as well.
right, exactly.
I think there's something very magical about the notion of community law. Actually, if you want to
Yeah.
explain that.
Yeah, of course. This is when small farmers will have enough of a certain coffee that it's worth harvesting, but it's not necessarily economically viable to export it as like a single lot or a single origin, anything like this. So different farmers in the community will pool their harvest into a given lot that is then processed in a washing facility, factory, whatever you want to call it, and develop these kind of they can be hit or miss, but the interesting community lots and really kind of hit of that variety can produce some of the best cups of coffee in the world.
Mhm.
So this is me also subtly pushing a way to support even smaller farmers who are doing more interesting things,
Mhm.
especially in the face of kind of global climate change and increasingly devastating and novel pathogens to the coffee plant.
Mhm.
So, go support your local coffee importers and roasters and small coffee houses and things.
Especially the ones that like have a relationship with those farmers and are visiting them personally. Yeah.
Yeah,
That Kenyan community law we had like about a month or two ago was
yeah,
pretty incredible. Yeah.
it's a really beautiful cup of coffee.
Hmm.
One of the other things that's really interesting with coffee is just how wildly different the conditions under which it's grown versus under which it's consumed can
Hmm.
be. Where there are famous anecdotes of coffee growers having never tasted their own crop,
Mm.
especially with, as it's exported as a raw seed
Hmm.
that has undergone some processing. It has not yet been roasted, aged, or otherwise prepared for consumption. So you will find some of the best cups of coffee in the world having never been consumed.
Hmm.
And,
By their growers.
yeah,
Which is, fascinating. I mean, I've heard the same about chocolate, people
right.
who grow up cacao, and just especially how exploitative, and frankly, like bound up in the economy of slavery.
Yeah,
So much of cacao is really globally, but people who never tasted chocolate or don't even, but have been growing it their whole lives for like pennies and having to, unfortunately, be governed by Nestle and all these other hell organizations. But it was interesting too, about coffee specifically, and realizing that like, oh, well, these farms aren't even possessing the equipment to actually consume it, like to
right,
reduce it into a drink. That's then at a completely different stage in the process.
right. And, it's a really interesting thing seeing even, um, coffee is also similarly bound up in the industry of slavery to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So important to know where you're getting your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
as to be avoiding that. Famously, certain coffee estates and plantations in Haiti were nuclei of the revolts
Mm-hmm.
there that led to the formation of Haiti as we know it today.
Mm-hmm.
So, complicated history, and just to say, do what you can to know where you're getting your coffee.
Yeah.
So, for the coffee as the plant itself, the only other species that's grown in really significant commercial qualities was mentioned earlier, coffee canephora, from which we get the Robusta variety of coffee. This is something that you will find typically more in instant coffees, which is actually not the powder, but it is a freeze-dried or otherwise dehydrated brewed cup of coffee. The method for this was invented in Japan and spread to the world as a faster and more commercially viable way to consume the potion of wakefulness that we know and love.
And giving birth to the uh, cafe like frappe of Greece, and
Right.
the Dalgona coffee that you hear of so much as well, where you whip it really fast in with sugar and a little bit of water, make that big foam.
Yeah, exactly. And this variety, the species comes to us from what is now the DRC. It was, cultivated and discovered and described in the 1800s. This is a lower acidity, more bitter and more woody flavor note, less of the fruitiness and delicacy that we would associate with Arabica and the higher altitudes at which it's grown. Um, resident coffee nerd that we've name dropped a few times, James Hoffman, one of my favorite writers on coffee ever, describes it as a burnt rubber quality in the cup, which I appreciate his mentioning that deeply because he is using the entire sensorium.
Mm-hmm.
You're using every reference that you have available, not just
Hmm.
taste.
Yeah.
More on that later. But yeah, most of the Arabica produced today, used for instant coffee, you'll find this in places like Brazil, Vietnam, India
Hmm.
are extremely common exporters because of the lower altitude, high humidity, flat swaths of land,
Hmm.
importantly, where it can be industrially and mechanically farmed.
Hmm.
So that's coffee as a plant.
Yeah. And I'm just fascinated by the economic histories of it so much. There's a really lovely Vietnamese coffee shop that I like to go to sometimes, and when I was there one time with a few friends, I called Key from the shop to be like, "Hey, they have the fin filters here,"
Yeah.
because I know you also really enjoy Vietnamese style coffee, and it was interesting to see. To learn the history of like why sweetened condensed milk, why egg, and it's of course, especially considering like what exactly happened with milk, in that country,
Yeah.
especially with colonialism, right? So it's interesting to see kind of like how novel ways of drinking coffee are also born based on colonial restrictions and innovation of what you actually have access to kind of, cut down the acidity with that extra fat.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the interesting things about coffee as a magical substance
Hmm.
is how closely it is tied to empire
Hmm.
and expansion throughout history as a crop and commodity that is traded and expands throughout the world and is harvested to be brought back to the imperial cores from the different colonies.
Hmm.
So as a substance of economy, we start to tease out its uses in, famously in incenses and powders for money, not just for its quickness, but also for this. It is a commodity crop. It's one of the most traded things that we grow in the whole world.
Hmm.
So, coffee as a beverage. Um, Coffee fruit, as we mentioned earlier, was being eaten in Ethiopia by the 6th century. This we know pretty definitively. It was being typically mashed and rolled into balls with different animal fats to be eaten as kind of a trail snack. In the cross-cultural hunter foods of carb mashed up into a fat and rolled into a little ball that you can carry with you that keeps and doesn't really go bad. Um, and honestly, it sounds delicious. Having had coffee fruit like once in my life, I could see this being really good.
It feels a little bit like some of those like protein energy balls
Very much so,
that
yeah.
you make nowadays. Yeah,
Yeah.
just get that maple syrup going and some almond flour and put your protein in. You're good.
Yeah, pairs well with coffee.
There you go.
But one of the interesting things is that we have no idea who first decided to roast the seeds of the coffee plant, grind them into a powder, steep that powder in boiling water, strain those grounds out of that, and then drink this potion.
Hmm.
We don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know why. Which has given rise to a lot of really beautiful speculation and theories, and that itself is a fertile ground for magic. But to go more into the history first, coffee consumption as we know it today likely originated in Yemen, where in the late 1400s, the use of the drink was well established among Yemeni Sufi communities, with the Sufi Imam Muhammad ibn Sa'id al Dahbani, forgive the pronunciation, being known to have imported goods from Ethiopia to Yemen. One of the oldest definitive historical sources, for sure, though, is Al-Qadir al-Jaziri, who, when writing in 1587 on different legal controversies involving coffee, reported that the Sheikh Jamal al-Din al-Tabhani, who at the time was the Mufti of Aden, was the first to adopt the use of coffee around 1454. He noted that among its properties was that it drove away fatigue and lethargy and brought to the body a certain sprightliness and vigor, aiding in the early work at the time. I think this is a great quote and anecdote, just as, from the beginning, it's being used to brighten the mind and waken the spirit and get people moving to do their work. And outside of this, other possible references to coffee's qualities appear in Al-Razi's 10th century Al-Hawi, and in friend of the show Avicenna's.
Indeed, a friend of the show.
Yeah. 11th century The Canon of Medicine. Although each of these quotes is with the caveat that it appears only in a later Latin language quotation of these texts, which are describing a plant component called buchnum, which has the properties of coffee as a drink, hot and dry, with Al-Razi allegedly reporting beneficial effects for the stomach, digestion, and other similar maladies, and Avicenna adding claims that it helped the skin and with body odor. Which, word.
Word. I mean, it is great at neutralizing odor.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And nowadays, we're not entirely sure what this Buchnum substance is. Other accounts at the time say it's derived from a root, so that immediately complicates what we're actually doing with coffee, which is why the more 1454 interpretation is a date that we can put on the calendar. But some people still think so, worth mentioning. From here, coffee spread to Mecca and the wider Arab Peninsula, and eventually the entirety of the Arab world. There are some apocryphal accounts that the world's oldest coffee house opened in Constantinople in 1475, being called Khivahan. Um, it is unclear if this ever actually existed, but the legend is there and is popular today.
Hmm.
So, coffee consumption, however, has, as we mentioned before, there are legal documents talking about controversies involving coffee. It was definitively banned in Mecca in 1511, similarly banned in Cairo in 1532. having psychoactive properties that it does. There was a lot of back and forth about whether or not it was permissible in Islam, going so far as to, at points in the history of the Ottoman Empire, being punishable by death for its consumption.
Hmm.
Although it is unlikely that this was enforced, and coffee consumption ultimately won out.
Well, it was seen as a kind of substitute for alcohol consumption as well.
It was, yeah.
Hmm.
There are even legends and accounts and sayings that with the advent of Islam and the uh, barring of the consumption of alcohol, the Archangel Jibril introduced coffee as an appropriate substitute for people.
Yeah, yeah. Directly to the Prophet Muhammad. Yeah.
Yes. Which I'm glad that they know we as humanity collectively love a little drink.
Mhm. Gotta have at least three.
Yeah, for sure.
Shout outs to the listeners who are fellow three drink girls. You know, you
Yeah,
got one for hydration, one for caffeine, and one for taste.
exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
For those of you at your desk right now who have a fourth drink, respect.
I'm the mayor of Cup City. I'll take these upstairs to be washed when I'm ready.
Exactly, yeah.
I say to my spirits. I'm just their little bartender, you know. I just run around with my little, like, I got a whole tray
Yeah,
in one hand, and I'm just taking all their cups to be washed. Hmm.
exactly, yeah. And throughout its history, one of the through lines of coffee is that it is a socially organizing principle.
Hmm.
It is a drink that is consumed originally communally out of a single drinking vessel, as was wine, which contributed to some of the early legal controversies about it. But it was a substance of the intelligentsia, the counterculture of different groups who would gather together and discuss ideas openly in different coffee houses. For those who have ever been around the world in a coffee place where, a anarchist and a communist are arguing over the state, over the same cup of espresso, um, as I have often been wont to do.
No, that's one of those things that's really, stories from my dad about like being in Yugoslavia and like being in like a coffee house and just arguing politics with people is some of the fondest memories I have. And then I relived that with you multiple times
Yeah.
at various punk places. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. But coffee as a substance is, as a result, inherently tied to community, to hospitality, to the culture of sitting down with friends and sharing food and drink and building of bonds, which is another magical property that I want to bring into this.
Hmm.
It is a social substance.
Hmm. And it brings your spirits together for sure.
Exactly. So as we carry on, later Arab chroniclers were well aware of this gap in knowledge as to the origins of coffee, just as we are today, which gave rise to many beautiful legendary accounts. Professor of Near Eastern Studies, Ralph Haddocks, in his book Coffee and Coffee Houses: The Origins of a Social Beverage in the Medieval Near East, gives us one of my favorites.
Abu al-Tayyib al-Ghazal relates an account in which Solomon appears as the first to make use of coffee. According to Abu al-Tayyib, Solomon was said to have come in his travels to a town whose inhabitants were afflicted with some unspecified disease. On the command of the angel Gabriel, he roasted coffee beans from the Yemen, from which he brewed the drink, which when given to the sufferers cured them of their illness. The report concludes by saying that coffee was then completely forgotten until the beginning of the 16th century. It's a historical bottom text.
It is, yeah. It's just we can't explain like 400 years. Fuck it, delete them.
Well, that I don't know, that is really funny.
Yeah,
Came in, handed down the law, cured these people, and it was just like word.
word.
Hmm.
And so immediately, alarm bells ringing. This is Solomon,
Hmm.
the same Solomon that we know and love. And as kind of these legendary figures or spiritual leaders or prophets come into play, it seems Gabriel likes to hand out coffee to the people.
Yeah, great patron of coffee.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just kind of thinking of that watery, lunary nature contrasted to the hot and dry of coffee as a drink. It's quite fun to affect the mind in this way. Coffee doled out to different legendary peoples over the years. There is a very popular legend about the origin of coffee, where in the year 850, a goat herder named Cowley noticed that his goats were nibbling on the coffee berries,
Mm.
and they became very energetic. They started to run around, bounce off the walls, have just a grand old goat time. So, wanting to know what the fuss was about, Caldy went over and chewed on the fruit himself and started to feel exhilarated. So, he took the berries to the nearest place of worship in the village and was explaining the situation to different Sufis and monks and kind of learned men who were there. And after this explanation, the head monk of this Islamic monastery deemed the berries to be the work of the devil and abruptly threw them into a nearby fire. So soon thereafter, this really beautiful and powerful aroma of roasting coffee began to fill the room, and none of the people present could ignore this anymore. So the head monk who threw them into the fire in the first place ordered the embers be pulled out from the fire and for hot water to be poured over them to capture the smell as a sort of hydrosol. And they decided to drink this mixture to learn more of its properties. And tasting it, they experienced the peaceful, warming, and calming sensation it gave them, with the after effects causing them to stay alert and awake and more able to discuss important matters for longer periods of time. So the monks then shared their discovery with other monks, and the knowledge of these berries began to spread.
Mm.
As beautiful as this is, we know this to be complete bullshit. Um, the first known instance of the story comes from a Anton Faustus Nerion, a Maronite Roman professor of Oriental languages and author of one of the first printed treatises devoted to coffee, which describes a camel or goat herder in the kingdom of Ayaman, which is now Ethiopia, having this kind of whimsical adventure. Later on, the name Kaldi appears,
Mm.
and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah.
There's a very fun hyperstition that occurs here,
Hmm.
where throughout Ethiopia and different parts of East Africa, there is a very popular coffee chain that is now called Kaldi.
It's awesome.
So to dive into coffee now as a magical substance,
Hmm.
having gotten the history and some of the botany out of the way, what can we say of coffee? It is hot generally. There's some actually physiologically cooling effect on the body as a result of drinking coffee. So it is a heat that is ultimately cooling, which I quite like, as well as, a community building substance being whitening, being cooling itself. It is also dry, it is bitter, slightly sweet, earthy, activating, and in most herbal systems has like a more masculine polarity to it.
Hmm.
It's usually owned mythologically by creator and magician deities. There's a really beautiful myth of how coffee came to be from the Oromo people of Ethiopia,
Hmm.
where the high god, kind of the sky god, Ahak or Haka, depending on versions of the story that I've heard, has a companion or a friend who is considered a very powerful sorcerer and a magician. And through some set of troubles or problems, is forced to bring this man to trial and ultimately convict him of some horrible crime. And the sentence for this crime is death, and Huck carries this out. Upon the death of the sorcerer, or shortly thereafter, it is revealed that he is wrongly convicted. He was framed or set up in some sort of way. So the tears that are shed by the high god at this point, that fall upon the grave of the sorcerer, give rise to the coffee tree. So it is considered an inherently magical tree at the morning of a death of a powerful magician, powerful enough that his death even moved the god of all creation.
Yeah.
And there is even a tradition that exists to this day where different holy men or sorcerers will have coffee trees planted atop their graves in memory of this event.
That's beautiful.
As a substance that is watered only by the tears of creator gods,
Hmm.
it is also considered an especially potent and powerful plant that does not have the same watery qualities that all other plants have in their black blood.
Incredible. Wow. I got goosebumps.
Beautiful. And of course, across the world, we find coffee in our own lives an especially important substance throughout the traditions of Brazil. Generally belongs to like the Funfun, the white deities, the creator deities, who like it, causes their bodies, catch up their brains.
Hmm.
And especially across kind of the diaspora. This belongs to the herbalist deities, magician deities. Osine is frequently given it to be able to focus on what he's thinking about. If you ever have been up at 4 in the morning and have a mat of 50 herbs in front of you, you better pray that you have a cup of coffee to know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah,
Um,
very true.
and
It's also how you get elders to do things.
it's so true.
In
It's so true.
every tradition.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What is the real magical function of coffee? It is getting elders to teach you things.
Because they're awake, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's true in Serbia too. I'll be real with you.
Yeah.
I know we're making like an ATR joke, but like it's absolutely true
Yeah.
in the Balkans too. Many discussions over how do you read beans and how do you do certain things from my teachers that were made over me making them turska kafa.
Beautiful.
Mm.
And of course, a beloved substance of the more elevated and deified ancestors, those guides, those magicians, those spirits that like to show up kind of older but wiser and love to, pick up some grass off the ground, tie it into a knot that is then the most powerful talisman you own.
Hmm.
So, we joked a bit about the drink, its true magical essence being getting elders to teach you things. Which, if you've ever carried around a tray of coffee very late at night and handed it to people, they will like you very quick. But it is ultimately a community building substance, in my opinion.
Hmm.
One of the main qualities that I want to emphasize, about coffee, the drink, is that it is cooling and whitening in this schema as a builder of community, as a pulling together of different people in different places, something that can get people to actually talk to each other, which I think is an often overlooked correspondence. But really, it is a reddening substance. It activates. It does things like that. It is, a beloved offering for the dead, as it wakes them up and gets them to our side again, who didn't like coffee in life. It gets your spirits to hurry the fuck up. It speeds up the speed of manifestation, brings things forward. It kind of energizes things when they need another shock. And as with all, kind of drying and bitter things with activating and masculine polarity, it is a very strong cleansing bath
Mm.
ingredient. Coffee, lemon, and ammonia is one of the strongest baths that I've ever seen used in the context of conjure and root work and hoodoo and things for the lifting of curses, uncrossing of conditions. Off parroted that just a single cup of coffee prayed over appropriately can break any curse. And you better yet, you divine in the grounds afterwards. And coffee is also a beautiful substance for breaking through stagnation, overcoming obstacles. When you are feeling that tiredness in your limbs, that you just can't get shit done, coffee is the substance to use. It's good for the skin, good for a scrub, good at removing toxins, purifying the air as well. Another thing we get to in a second, but really divination by way of coffee grounds at the bottom of a cup.
Yeah, something that even outside of like magic or whatever like that was just taught to me from a young age just because it's cultural.
Yeah.
Like it's not even necessarily considered magical. It's barely even we wouldn't really call it even like divination formally. It's just something that you do. It's so you kind of ubiquitous that it's not really something that we would necessarily classify as esoteric, right? Like I often like joke with friends also from the Balkans, be like, who among us has not spent an afternoon gossiping with a bunch of other women in our family over coffee grounds, right? Like
Yeah.
it's, what remains, whether it's the images or what is being shown about the person, like how it is the way that your spiritual fluid, if you will, enters the cup as you drink it and consume it, and the way it kind of trades places with you and leaves behind the painting on the bottom of the cup. Like if you ever visit me in person, you know that there's one restaurant I take every friend who visits me once, and it's this beautiful place called Ethiopian House. And we get the coffee ceremony, and I read everyone's cups at the end. But there is like I also realized like kind of like the cultural joke of it is realizing that like, oh, I'm doing it automatically. Let me ask permission because it's like it's such an automatic
Yeah.
impulse to be like, oh, of course, let me have a look.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And even at the mention, there is a coffee ceremony. It
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
a ritualized consumption across cultures that interact with coffee.
Oh, that
Um,
popcorn and frankincense.
oh, so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
So chocolatey too.
Yeah. It's that nice, sooty, dark roast. It's nice and sweet.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh,
like for such a dark roast, it's so sweet.
yeah. Oh, it's so good. Whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Ethiopian House.
Mm-hmm.
So, apart from the drink, the coffee grounds themselves, strongly cleansing substance. This, I find, it's because it's a natural air freshener. If you leave coffee grounds out, they will soak up bad odors, which of course, is linked to negative spirits in the environment, those little ambient things that like to cause problems. So it'll soak it up, kind of lock them away in the grounds that you can then get rid of, throw them away outside of your house, throw them elsewhere. They're a strongly cleansing substance unto themselves. You can make them as scrubs. You can burn them as a fumigation all their own, often alongside the peels of garlic and onion or other alliums. Also, sometimes with sugar or with all three. But important to note that in every recipe I've seen of this and every one I've heard it from, follow it up with something sweet if this is done, burning it. Because it is such a strong cleansing, kind of strip the shit away substance, it is good to mix in sweeteners afterwards. Think of the things that we do to make coffee more palatable. We use white substances, the milks, the creams, the sugars, and we use sweet substances, honey, sugar.
Yeah, I was just about to say it too. Like, should be pretty self-explanatory, but before you do a big cleansing of your home, especially if you do it regularly, like we do, let everyone know. Like,
Yeah,
go to each shrine, just so you know, I'm going to be using a pretty powerful cleanser. Would you like me to veil you? Are you going to be good? Spirits are smart. They'll leave.
yeah,
They'll just straight up like leave shrines and wait a little bit if you're going to be using a really powerful like spiritual influence thing. It doesn't mean that it will actually like scare your spirits away, but sometimes it's still unpleasant. It's still an intense
yeah,
smell. There's certain spirits that I know, like, if this kind of spirit outlet that I have, like, let's say like their species, if they were with somebody else in a negative fashion, this combination of herbs would definitely scare them away or would cleanse them away. That doesn't mean that mine are immune to it. It just means that, like, let people know, like, hey, I'm gonna be vacuuming, it's gonna be loud, that kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm gonna walk through anyone's house with scrapings of goat horn and rue and guinea and whatever else in there,
Yeah,
it's gonna
like,
be potent.
actual garlic peel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
just good housekeeping applies,
Yeah.
and invite them back with some good coffee.
Exactly. Yeah. Invite them back with something nice.
Yeah. And I think one of the things about coffee grounds as a substance, I love to use them in powders because they're activating, they quicken results, they really enliven other ingredients, they get them to work, they can harmonize things. They're just a great base, especially because you can get it in bulk powder around pretty much instantly at any store. And one of the fun things that I like to do is get really nerdy and granular and alchemical about what coffee grounds are going into my powders.
Preach it. I need the world to hear this part.
Yeah, so as coffee is processed, there is what's called a natural process. Sometimes you'll hear it as dry process, which is where the coffee fruit is just left out under the sun, either on raised beds or on the floor. And the fruit is allowed to dehydrate and kind of rot away. So it has undergone this kind of rotting process, but there's no other thing introduced into it. So this is generally what I like to introduce into powder since it's driest. And then there's a spectra of other processes. So there is what's called a wash process, where instead of allowing it to just sit out and rot in the sun, it is thrown into essentially a big washing machine and depulped. And all of these, fruit fruit is washed away, leaving only the seed behind. So this is, of course, going to introduce alchemically some more watery nature into the process, and it's actually going to affect the final taste of the coffee. It's not going to be as fermented. It's going to lose some of the more delicate floral notes and aromas. It's going to lose some tea-like qualities, and you're going to start to push it in a more terroir specific direction. And there's also an intermediary process between wet and dry that's called the honey process.
Which I learned today has something to do with honey.
Yeah. The mucilage, botanically, the mucilage.
The mucilage.
That
Tell me more about the mucilage, please.
so there's a mucilage that forms around the seed within the fruit that is a sort of white membrane that's
The white membrane of your seed.
around my seed called the
They call
mucilage.
them mucilage.
Which oh man. Um but in Spanish and Portuguese this is called miel. So
Mm.
that's where it comes
The
from,
honey,
honey
yeah.
process,
Well,
where
the bees attack it.
yeah,
Mm.
as a thing. So it's a whole cluster of phenomena that joins together. But this is sort of an intermediary between the wet and dry process because certain amounts of this mucilage are left onto the bean, and this determines where in the honey process it falls, and it's given named conveniently for everyone involved, white honey, red honey, and black honey.
You got the three primary essays right there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So while this is just a linguistic pun, that is where all good herbalism comes from. So you better believe I'm using it in my powders.
Yes. Hell yes. This refers to how much of the mucilage is left, right? So like
Yes.
white means very little, red is intermediary somewhere, and black is,
Yeah,
you know, 60% and more or something like that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mucilage.
Mucilage. And there are some other really esoteric processes that people have come up with. Like people will ferment shit anaerobically. Like you'll put it into a large container and then evacuate the atmosphere from it, or like strip.
Evacuate the dance floor.
Oh my God.
Sorry, last night I celebrated a friend's birthday. I was at karaoke. We were doing all the 2000s hits.
Yeah.
That's why my voice is so weird today.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is definitely involved. So you can get very alchemical with it, depending on the amount of essence of the water that is still within the substance for the powders. As a for those who make a lot of powders, watery powders are weird.
Mm-hmm.
So don't put water in your powders.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
No mold, thank you.
And while we're on the topic, a lot of people give the patronage of coffee to Mercury,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see this happening.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, with how linked to the mind it is, the quickening of the speech, the language, the result. I actually give coffee to Mars because it is fiery, hot, dry, activating, and so intrinsically alchemical a process that I can't help but give it to Mars. Which, for those listening, as mad as you are that alchemy is not a mercurial art, it's a martial art. You are ripping apart the substance.
the the substance. The mucilage of the
Oh, the
substance.
mucilage. Nasty.
Nasty.
Oh man. So the coffee beans themselves, beans used as little charm bundles, either one bean or many beans, as protection against the evil eye,
Facts.
and it can be used in divination.
Very much so, and many different styles of divination, not just coffee grounds as we were talking about earlier.
Right.
One of if you like favomancy, like divination with actual beans, one way to divine as well is taking. Well, there's many methods of it. Some from the Balkans, some from Sicily that I've heard as well. But you're going to be taking a piece of bread, especially specific kinds of bread, a coin, and a coffee bean, or a seed, I suppose, roasted seed, as well as a set of beans with one marked for you or with just one bean. And you throw them and you interpret based on how they land. So you look at like, where is the one that's marked for you closest to? Is it closest to the coin, which represents wealth? Is it closest to the bread, which represents health? And is it closest to the coffee bean, which is actually not so nice things? The negative maladies that come in life, as well as the evil eye. And you're looking at their positions relative to each other, triangulating. If you're throwing with more beans, they're going to be looking at shapes that they make. So is it making a fish? Is it making an anchor? I don't know why I got so Lehrman with that for a second, but you make different shapes, right? And so, but there's all kinds of interesting coffee bean divinations in the world. That one just happens to be the one that I learned first. But it's a lovely kind of first pass at things, especially when you're trying to like pull bits of the evil eye off of someone or determine how severe is the case.
Totally, yeah. And beans similarly thrown object assemblages always find its way into sort of the neo Sangoma, like bone throwing and like hoodoo bone throwing and stuff like that, where the reading is ultimately going to have an idiosyncratic meaning, but either the evil eye or all that quickness and alertness in life and things you have to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Guess so, like there's some good Javamancy out there though.
There really is, yeah. And also worth mentioning while we're here, there is a patron saint of coffee and coffee houses and baristas. This is Saint Drogo, who was a 12th century Flemish saint who has a variety of things going on with him. Started off as an orphan shepherd, the preferred people of God.
Massive.
And
So true.
and was known throughout his life for his ability to bilocate.
I mean, may we all be so skilled that one day we are known for that.
Yeah. And I find a nice little mirror there with the two seeds that are in each heart.
Yes. Hmm.
And his own, two seeds of his soul, one of which would always be in the church, and one of which would be in the pastures with his flock of sheep.
Mm.
And he led a pretty interesting life. Later, kind of early in life, he had a pretty severe hernia that prevented him from doing much of anything afterwards, with, treatment options being kind of limited in the 1100s. So he ended up becoming an anchorite and living in a small cell next to the church for 45 years, subsisting on a diet of bread, barley, and water. So no coffee, obviously being in the 1100s in Europe, but we find that patronage mapped onto him later.
Hmm.
Kind of a cool other legend associated with him is his relics were attempted to be translated to another church, much to the opposition of the people who actually knew him in life.
Mm.
And relics were loaded into a cart, and they began to process the cart from the church where he previously was interred to a new church. And the cart became heavier and heavier, so heavy that the entire village couldn't move it. And they interpreted this as a sign from God that he should remain where he was. So they erected a roadside shrine to him at the place where the cart stopped, which is still there today,
Hmm.
and returned his body back to the church where he is
A
now.
little St. Christopher moment there.
Exactly, yeah.
Hmm. Fascinating as well is just giving uh, coffee to saints is
Right.
because I often brew it in a jezva, Turkish style. Domaća kafa, for those Serbs listening. I'm reading the grounds afterwards when I empty the cup to actually determine what this saint communicating to me, like what is that ancestor or that saint necessarily saying. And it will usually be some kind of good omen to be like, okay, I'll be aware of this, kind of like washing incense smoke. Like, okay, this is a good extra piece of information for what I'll do next.
Mhm.
And sometimes I take a little bit of the ground, especially if it's really healthy and good, like in terms of like this is a really positive reading. I'll take that and make a little cross on the saint statue if it's a statue, or like roughly on the border of the icon, and be like, okay, well, the rest will go into a plant, that kind of thing as an excellent fertilizer. But really, I'm looking to just kind of give it a boost.
Yeah. And for those of you who have ever bought my St. Expedite oils, the label that is on every bottle is actually coffee stained paper with coffee that was offered to Expedite, where the grounds are divined to be a fortuitous omen for this oil going to each person.
I love that.
So I'm a nerd.
And well, when you make your eventual like logos, we've been playing around with some packaging and branding and stuff like that, very much based on kind of the druggist's manual stuff that we were talking about in our previous episode. Are you still going to be doing the coffee paper though?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful. Because I really love it. I think it's a great extra touch. Kind of simple, not too like fancy necessarily, but has that extra, wink, wink, nudge, nudge of juju.
Yeah, it's a little enchantment unto itself.
Hmm.
Just may this get where it's going quickly.
Well, as a person who's so interested in different tasting profiles, and that's kind of how we started the episode. I One thing that I feel like is we often just speak of like, oh, we're giving coffee to the spirit, or we're using coffee
Right.
for boosting the speed of something. But I'm really fascinated that you go into the actual notes when it comes
Yeah.
to how you're doctoring the coffee for different spirits.
Yeah, exactly. I think with coffee on its own can be a flavor in other contexts, like a tasting note. But really, when you're tasting coffee, you're going into any number of possible other flavors. So I want to doctor what I'm giving my spirits on that level of if I can taste this and I'm giving it to them, they're also going to be aware of it. So if, I take a little sip of the coffee to be better and I'm like, oh, this, particular variety, as we were talking about in the beginning, has these nice notes of, vanilla and things. I'm not going to be offering this coffee for peaceful, or for war like work.
Hmm.
I'm going to be offering it for peaceful things. Let's get the spirit back on my side. Let's cool them off a little bit. This is a more community thing.
Mm.
Whereas if I'm going to rouse a spirit to war, I'm going to give them a cup of like the sludgiest, dirtiest, like instant coffee out of the fucking military ration that I got.
Yeah.
to be like, hey, like let's fucking go. You know what we're doing here.
Mm.
So this is all, coded language of offerings and what you're actually doing based on flavor profiles. If I want my spirits to be sweet to me, I'm not going to give them a really bitter cup of coffee. I'm going to give them a nice, beautiful, sweet floral cup of coffee.
Mm.
And similarly, if I want to piss something off to get it to do something for me, I'm going to give it a nice, bitter cup of coffee.
Yeah, yeah. When depending on how angry you want your spirit, you can start giving them the AeroPress plunger coffee with the filter that's been reused. Was it 60?
God, no, yeah, the 60 times. The inventor of the AeroPress, which for those who don't know is just a coffee brewing device.
A very convenient one.
It has a paper filter that you put into it that you use to filter the coffee. The inventor of the AeroPress is like, oh no, the paper filters are reusable.
And they're not. Even like with my limited knowledge of coffee, I can promise you, having learned to make it with the AeroPress, thanks to it's not reusable.
It's not.
No,
No, don't,
don't.
don't.
Mm-mm.
Crazy.
I mean, that is material.
It is, yeah.
Mhm.
60 times filtered
Hey,
bullshit.
Hermes thrice greatest AeroPress. Uh,
60th filtered.
yeah, exactly. Oh God,
It's horrible.
disgusting.
It's so pure.
Hmm. It's like it becomes gold at the end.
Yeah.
Shouts to the gold AeroPress. I was like, what is that thing? It's like a gold AeroPress and a silver AeroPress, and you explained to me that they are literal trophies.
Yeah, they just took AeroPresses and spray painted them gold and silver as the trophies for AeroPress
Honestly, work.
championships,
Yeah.
which I love
Mm.
it. And then, to close us out today, like talking about coffee as a more specific substance with notes all its own that you can really doctor to something else. When I say, oh, this cup of coffee has, a very beautiful tasting note of pear, apple, ripe white fruits, has a nice light body, sour, acidic, palate opening
Dragon eyes.
profile. Yeah, the long non incident.
Hmm.
We were at a specialty coffee place and clocked a note that was absolutely in the cup that the roaster was like, fuck.
They were mad at you for some reason. Before yeah, I thought they'd be excited because it doesn't say long on berries on the packaging,
Mhm.
but they were like, "But that is a note. We just didn't say it." And
Mogged.
and then, oh no, got the taste mogged.
He had a lethal cortisol spike.
We needed to talk about the ontology of cortisol becoming like a mainstream talking point
Yeah.
because of freaking looks maxers.
And with all these notes, I wanted to throw one of my favorite books of all time into this episode, just to talk about the epistemology of magical correspondence.
Mm.
Because I love a correspondence table.
Hmm.
We love a table of correspondence. We love a coffee table of correspondence.
Oh yes.
I love a coffee table book.
Hmm.
Send them to me.
Yeah, and literal coffee table books that are not about coffee.
Yeah. So, Tasting Coffee: An Inquiry into Objectivity is a book by Kenneth Lieberman, who previously studied the way that Buddhist monks would discursively argue the Dhamma
Amazing.
and studied the particular rhetorical strategies that would be used to establish truth of a given statement. And this book is a beautiful expose on the global coffee industry, but it is using that industry and that supply chain as a lens to say, how do we know that anything does anything?
Hmm.
And so from this, I encourage people to look at the material and actually understand what the fuck they're using. Because if we're just going to throw coffee into something, we could be throwing coffee into it for coffee's sake, or we can understand what we're actually doing here. And we can dig into it and make things even more precise, even cleaner, even better as kind of these theoreticians of magic. This is sort of the analytical gaze turned toward material toward the end of making it better. Um, where I'm like, doesn't matter? No. Is it a small optimization that I fucking love? Absolutely. And going off into any other piece of materia, are we going to throw it in because we say, oh, you know, Muline is really good for getting spirits to manifest and provoking dreams or doing any of these other things? Or are we going to actually go out to the side of a highway where a mullein plant is growing through the gravel and we're going to look at it and see, oh, you have fluffy, downy leaves. You're a nice little pillow for me. I'm going to take you and harvest your leaves and smoke them and then experience all the pharmacogenic like properties of this and feel the lungs open, have more restful sleep, be able to dream better as a result, and go into that level of understanding of materia. So my message to the show, if anything, use the senses you have.
My message to carcists: get silly.
Yes.
Yes. But it's such a great point too, is the enchantment of your senses is such an important part of scrying,
Yep.
such an important part of breaking through kind of the hegemonic materialist worldview that so many of us are cooked in.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to kind of play with just knowing that spirits value scent so highly, especially in compare and taste, especially as in comparison to sight, and that they are deeply motivated and stirred through smells, through the way that the essence of food or drink rises as a spiritual substance and is then consumed, the way that like offerings often rarely mold. Rarely go bad. They just get dry and kind of listless. Certain spirits are especially known to dry out, like the very things that are given to them until they become even substances of their own.
Right.
Um, Thinking about the case of apples with duendes that I was just
Oh
talking about
yeah.
with me, Maestro Alex Wuho. He was sharing with me these examples of these apples that become shriveled, after
Yeah.
months of being let out, left completely for the house spirits of the duendes. And so it's one of those things when the more we think about it in terms of like, yes, there is these spirits are feeding on these substances, so why don't we train ourselves to become a lot more aware of how these substances can also in turn, as we, as spirits and human bodies, can also turn to manipulate them.
Exactly. Yeah. And in turn, your mediumship will develop because, not to Gurdjieff post too hard here.
Oh, do it! I've actually, thanks to our godfather,
Yeah.
Tata Apokan, I've been getting into Gurdjieff. Like, I just bought quite a few of his books. I've been going
Yeah.
through them.
But, if we are asleep moving through the world, if
Hmm.
we are not using our sensorium, if we are not engaging with the things that we are actually engaging with, then our other senses are going to atrophy. They're going to be weak. We are in the state of being asleep. So you must caffeinate yourself spiritually and engage your senses. So the more that you develop taste, the better your mediumship's going to get. The more that you develop your smell, the better your mediumship's going to get. The better you develop your sight, your hearing, your touch, your intuitive knowing, the ability to latch onto and focus on the first thing that comes to mind without projecting or inventing another first thing that we tell ourselves it should be, the
Mm-hmm.
better your mediumship's going to become and the better everything else is going to become. So all of your sensorium is going to play with itself. Like how many times have we known a spirit's in the room because we smell their perfume
Yeah, yeah,
or we
yeah.
taste the coffee that they liked in life?
Mm. Or even just like I love what you're saying about the um so often, like when you're looking at somebody who's developing their mediumship, their first impression is the most accurate, and then they psych themselves out of it.
Right.
They think, no, that was me projecting. No, that was me being clever and doing a lot of like a mental association, like based on previous patterns I've observed or based on previous information that I just happen to have about this. And I just assumed it and I projected it.
Right.
There's so much of like the way we kind of slap our hands away from the object when it comes to scrying. Like I see it all the time in divination as well with people like their first pass, like when they glance at the cards or the beans or they're glancing at the figures, and their like first initial pass is so like it's like that initial smell. You're like, wait, I've seen this before. This doesn't just look like this combination. This also tells me something that's going on with our mother-in-law.
Yeah.
This will be something that's happening here. This female figure is not their mother, it's their mother-in-law. And I can feel it because every association I've had in the past with your own life or your friends' lives or your previous divinations, like this is mother-in-law energy. And this is the issue here.
Yeah.
And then you tell yourself, no, I mean, I'm just assuming, And but it's that first pass, and often that happens. Like people feel a little shy to say it. Sometimes it's like when you correct them on something, and they're like, "Oh, that's actually the first thing I thought of. I swear, I just didn't
Yeah.
vocalize it." And it's all good. Vocalize it. Like just tell yourself, okay, maybe like leave a bit more room in your soul for that first impression, because there's something pure about that when it first hits your senses and the automatic associations you make with it before you start telling yourself, "No, that's just me. It's my mind interrupting." It's like, no, it's your mind dancing with it.
Yeah.
It's your mind which has all these previous experiences dancing in that beautiful little waltz with what has presented itself before it.
Exactly. What is the diviner's trance if not you getting out of your own way?
Yes, yes, indeed. Beautifully said. Short, sweet, to the point, and beautifully clear, like a good cup of coffee. Key,
Yes.
this was very lovely. I had such a blast learning from you.
Thank you. This was a very fun one. It is a lifelong passion of mine, even longer than magic.
Mm.
So,
Wow, that's very
yeah.
true. Yeah. How old were you when you started getting into
Oh
coffee?
God, I don't even know. I was like early high school, maybe
Mm-hmm.
even earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I uh have been into magic since childhood. Like I just grew up with it very much. So it wasn't something that I necessarily was introduced to. But also with coffee, even though it wasn't my thing, and I honestly like uh not only have I not really partaken in drinking a lot of coffee in my life, same thing with alcohol. Like I'm not really like somebody who my beverages of choice are teas, so like that's the thing that I really fixate on. But it's something I've come to appreciate a lot more. And have come to kind of appreciate the notes a lot more, largely because of spirit work, and especially thanks to you, really. So it's been fun to kind of see that, like, nevertheless, what was always by my side, along with the ancestors, along with the spirits, along with the stories of my family and their village. It's definitely been coffee, like served at every place, even if I'm not necessarily partaking of it. But the smells for sure have always know how to rise my spirit and how to um. There's a certain brand of coffee that my mom drinks. Like it's her favorite. It's Grand Kafa for those who are Serbian. You know it, you love it, and that is the coffee that I reach for that will go into certain ancestral charms,
Mhm.
like bar none, because it will pull them better than any expensive specialty cup, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Mhm. Well, wonderful. I like a good short episode, one that, I mean, not that they're not an hour at least, but like I like when we get to kind of explore the phenomenology of a specific plant profile or a specific object. Kind of like our Hackstone episode was one of those earliest ones, I think.
Yeah,
Hmm.
totally. A
Beautiful.
nice shot of espresso to the magical mind.
Yeah, indeed. And speaking of which, your Akashic record was going to be the one I was going to choose.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got ahead of me.
your first impression.
Yeah, literally my first impression. Yeah.
Yeah, it is Caffeine by Foreign Air.
Yeah. So in the spirit of all the raving we've been doing, mine is going to be the Charles B. and Matt Murder version of Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger,
Oh yeah.
which is how things feel when it hits the brain.
Yeah, how you like a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah. Good, good caffeine.
Yeah, we're not even talking about water chemistry today. We'll not get into that. That's for a
No.
different show.
No, yeah.
Oh man.
For sure. Also, just a good reminder, right, that we always have our Akashic Records. Check them out on Spotify. Akashic Records of the Firefly Howls playlist if you want to go listen to all the previous ones too.
Oh yeah.
Now, we were trying to think of like a license to depart for a while, including because there's so many good ones that we could use for coffee. And the one that we ended up landing on is actually from the book Every Moment Holy by Doug McKelvey. It's called The Liturgy of the Morning Coffee. And honestly, like there's just something that just tickles me about like using a Christian book of like the liturgies for ordinary events and like everyday, like moments that you can kind of render into a moment of a spiritual expression, and instead using it for our very occult,
Yeah,
profane podcast.
exactly. Heresy never blasphemy,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
our Godfather
As
once
the
said.
Godfather says, indeed. Yeah, check out his classes with Salem. And also come to Salem this August for Salem Witch Fest to meet us in person. I'll be presenting, and Key will be there as Vanna White.
Just hanging out.
Just hanging out, yeah.
Yeah.
Pointing at things.
Attending as a guest
Hmm.
to unofficial official Frightful Howls meet and greet,
Yeah.
where you can show up and buy me cups of coffee.
Well, we can also just do a nice little pub crawl. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's going to be a Frightful Hallows meetup. So if you're coming, let us know. Even whether you're a Patreon or not, just message us on Instagram, Discord, everywhere. Let us know you're coming, so we can add you to the eventual group chat to organize for August. Well, we'll hang out, meet us in person, say
Yeah.
hi.
The illicit face reveal.
Not the face reveal.
What is it? Illicit but valid?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll just put a paper bag on you. It's
Yeah.
okay. With a Nazar on it.
Yeah. Just two googly eye Nazars and
Yeah,
a
yeah.
smiley face and Sharpie.
Well, shall you do first?
Of course. Meet me, O Christ, in the stillness of the morning. Move me, O Spirit, to quiet my heart. Mend me, O Father, from yesterday's harms. From the discords of yesterday, resurrect my peace. From the discouragement of yesterday, resurrect my hope. From the weariness of yesterday, resurrect my strength. From the doubts of yesterday, resurrect my faith. From the wounds of yesterday, resurrect my love. Let me enter this new day aware of my need and awake to your grace, O Lord. Amen. We are drinking.
Oh, shit.